Right, let's take you back to one of our top stories now. The South African Council of Churches is concerned about Monday's national shutdown by the economic freedom fighters. The council says while everyone has a constitutional right to demonstrate, it's threats of violence that are worrisome. For more on this, we're joined by the Council's General Secretary, Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana. Thank you very much, Bishop, for your time here on eNCA. Just more information on, your concern around violence with regards to the shutdown on Monday. Is it anything specific that EFF leaders might have said in the public that says that there will be violence on Monday?
Not at all, not at all. On the contrary, they've actually said that there will be no violence and that they will act, and they've invited the security forces to act against anyone that does violence, as well as that they themselves will apply their own disciplinary processes against such a person. That's not the issue at all. But the issue is that our experience has shown that it happens without necessarily being planned by the organizers. It happens a lot, and I mean, we've had a horrible experience of July 21. That it's very difficult for South Africans to put that behind their minds. But we do recognize that every South African, every organization has a right to demonstrate in our society, and those protests are legal and legitimate. It also is true that the issues that they are raising are very serious issues that most South Africans understand to be issues of concern. The question is whether it is possible to guarantee that nobody will cause something inappropriate anywhere in the country where this is taking place. That's really the issue. And of course, we're getting all these calls from member churches and people in those churches that are concerned, and that's what we're expressing.
So then, if the leaders of the EFF have said that they have told their members not to be violent, is it a case of not trusting them and their word?
No, it's not. It's a matter of saying that no leader knows exactly what everybody that follows them will do what they are told to do. It's a natural. I mean, trade unions always have their marches. And in no time somebody loots. It's not because the trade union leaders had said you must loot.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Bishop. And you also mentioned in your statement the concern around how much this is going to cost the economy when businesses are expected to shut down on Monday.
Especially the workers who would wish to go to work. If the business closes for fear that their business may be looted, what then happens is that they do a no work, no play to their workers. Workers who are not on a protest, who would have wanted to be in their place of work at that time, you know what? They lose their income. That applies also to small business people who trade on people being at work. They lose those incomes for the day. Those are matters of concern, of course. It does mean that there's more responsibility on the security forces to ensure that they accompany appropriately the protesters and ensure that none of them get out of line, and that's their duty. And they have to do that in order, because last time we blamed them for not showing up, and now at least we want them to make sure that they do that, but also we are appealing that none of them must use lethal force when they deal with protesters, but they must use regular, standard crowd control measures that are appropriate for a situation such as this in a democracy such as ours.
And I have to agree with you there, Bishop. I have to agree with you there, Bishop, because when the police did say that they'd be out in their numbers and the SANDF was then also deployed, one of the leaders of the EFF said this would be provocative to some of its members. And therefore, I agree with you with not wanting the clash either from our police or from EFF members, especially because we've seen how in some instances police act in protests. There's been topics before about how our police officers in South Africa are not adequately trained for protests.
It is indeed true. But I think that the key thing really that we would like to emphasize is that all these protests are necessitated or occur because we as South Africans are actually failing to find a common ground that is the South African nest we can all identify with. And a part of that has to do with the failure to transition adequately from the culture, the landscape of the apartheid era to what we call at the SACC the promise of the post-apartheid South Africa, which is a free society, just, reconciled, peaceful, that is free of racism, tribalism, xenophobia, and gender prejudices, free of corruption, and that goes with it, but where every child born can grow to its God-given potential. It doesn't happen when 75% of young people between the age of 15 and 24 are not in employment or at school. So all these things need to be, they're serious issues. We need to address them collectively as South Africans with a common mind, a common set of values, not this kind of my space, your space, my space, your space. And of course, we thrive on the conflict amongst ourselves.
And I guess, Bishop, also we're all hoping that this is not some political political ploy, because we all know that next year is a very big elective year in South Africa. We've seen how coalitions are not working in the past 2 years or so. So hopefully innocent lives, I guess that would be the church's other concern, that innocent lives are not being used as some way to campaign.
It is our prayer indeed. In fact, we have asked the churches and all communities of faith to use this weekend as a time of prayer. But not only, remember that we're at least those who practice this, we're in the season of Lent, which is a season of self-reflection, self-introspection. All of us have got some blame to bear on the situation in our country. If I point a finger at you, there are some 3 fingers that are pointing at me. So in any case, all of us have something that we can say, I wish I had done this differently. And I think we should do that so that we can all rise to a society beyond Easter that we can all be proud of. That takes some doing, but it means each of us must come out of our high horses and be prepared to accept where we've fallen.
And just lastly, while I still have you, Bishop, I've always been interested to know how load shedding has affected the churches. If you could just explain to us, because we know that it's affecting all industries in a very negative way.
Oh, yes, no question about it. The churches are affected terribly. But then, in all fairness, the majority of South African worshippers who are poor black communities don't have much to do with electricity when they worship. They don't use microphones.
You can still find God in the dark.
They don't use microphones. But I have to say that, especially for churches that depend on microphones, these our mega churches have got a huge. But of course, most of those are also better endowed and are able to get generators and inverters and other things that they do. But the problem with load shedding isn't that for poor communities, you buy very little. So if you've got a refrigerator and things rot, it's very difficult to replace them. So that's really where the problem is. It's not so much at the church level, but at the congregation, the communities that live with load shedding. It's a huge problem, and we believe that one of the things that the churches are proposing is that, in this just transition, we solarize the roofs of churches so that they can then help their communities with particularly the schools and the health centers in their neighborhood, as well as those homes that have got people who will die if they do not have oxygen or something like that. This is a pastoral concern. This is something that we're discussing, that we should believe. If we can solarize our roofs for our neighborhoods, for our communities, we can be able to make a difference for poor communities.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Bishop. And hopefully it doesn't put the churches in danger of thieves. But I think that's an excellent idea. Bishop Mpumlwana, thank you very much for your time. Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana from the South African Council of Churches.